What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday morning. Welcome into our latest Trade to Black podcast presented by Dutchie. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Long week. Voice is a little hoarse, but we did see a lot of people in the industry, got a lot to talk about, and a recap of MJBizCon, some of the stuff that we heard. A lot of people we saw there from the industry. All in all, it was a good week, but we'll provide some sentiment as to what we heard. Anthony Coniglio is going to come on in just a moment. Plus, we'll talk about the news. Curaleaf is entering into Virginia, what this means for that company, and as well, Trulieve and Verano entering and cracking into the state of Texas. All this news that basically unfolded while we were out west. So let's dive into that and talk about that. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Friday morning. And time moves fast because it was about 8-9 hours ago. We were just wrapping up dinner in Vegas, and here we are this morning, fresh off the red eye, a little sleepy, but hey, we're producing content.
Yep. Yeah, we are.
Yep, we are. And to bed afterwards. But we'll get into all this news that we were away this week. Curaleaf being one. I think everybody in the industry is talking about that right now. And also just some of the stuff that we saw. We ran into the Village Farms people, asked them questions on some of the licensing for TCUP. And yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise to see them not get a license, but Trulieve and Verano did. And that was another hot conversation. But all in all, it was a good week.
It was good. It was kind of like I don't want to say catch-22, but like it was good to see everybody that we knew. It was good to see everybody like the Jeter event. It was good to see everybody at the Attach event. But the conference itself was flat.
Yes.
I would be lying to say that it wasn't a very lackluster like exhibit hall. It was probably 30% smaller than years past. And there weren't that many people there. It just didn't have any energy to it. That being said, I mean, the ancillary events and everybody that we saw at the respective hotels thought was great. And
Johnny,
I have said, Johnny, that is true.
Yeah. Johnny, sounds like you both got sick. Yeah, we were at an event, was it Wednesday night? And the music was pretty loud. So you had to basically scream to the next person to you in order to hear them. But we haven't recovered from our hoarse voices. But we did attend Michael Bronstein's event at Attach at the Las Vegas Country Club, and good insight with appreciate that Cole memo, but good insight from the industry. And we saw a lot of the powers to be from the space talking about anything and everything, rescheduling being another thing. So yeah, that was interesting. So let's bring in Anthony Coniglio from NewLake Capital, who we saw at the Attach event on Wednesday night. Good day, sir, and good to see you. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Much better than you guys are.
You got back yesterday, correct?
I did. I got back yesterday. Yeah.
Smart.
Yesterday morning.
Anthony and I woke up yesterday morning. We really would like to get on a plane and go home right now, but we elected to the red eye. But all in all, to Anthony's point, I know that you were in meetings all day throughout the week while at the conference, and didn't get a chance. I don't know if you did go down to the conference, but it was a lot smaller I saw a lot of the exhibitors, but there were a lot of important people, including that Attach event. But what was your takeaway in some of the key things that I guess you heard and learned about the industry that gives people maybe some insight on what they may have missed for those that didn't attend?
Yeah, I guess first I would say we didn't make it over to the actual floor of the conference. We spent most of our time over the 2 days meeting to meeting. But I did hear from people that validated what Anthony was saying, that definitely the floor felt like it was much less populated. There were many fewer people. So I think attendance overall was down. It also reinforced for me the benefit of just being in person. It's great to go to these events. For those that don't participate, sometimes people from the outside will think, oh, these are boondoggles. These are opportunities for people to go to Vegas and have a good time in Vegas. And sure, some people do that, but by and large, there's a lot of really quality discussions that are happening, people shuttling from meeting to meeting. And then it's the opportunity for the ad hoc discussions. When you're walking from meeting to meeting, you're actually walking with somebody else, perhaps that's going the same direction, and you catch 5 minutes of a quality conversation. So it's great to do these things.
Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I did grab my attention. I saw you guys, and I was taking part a little bit of the conversation too. But we talked about this hemp ban, and that was, definitely a big top conversation. We saw Jim Higdon as well, but it's pretty clear that the industry is going to get smaller on that hemp side. There's going to be a lot of verbiage that's going to change within this hemp roundtable on defining hemp. But one of the topics that was discussed is how much the regulated market of cannabis will benefit from this hemp ban and how much it'll grow. We heard some big significant numbers. I think 8 to 10% makes sense, but people think it's more. And what did you guys like as far as this whole hemp ban? Do you think it's pretty clear that it's basically changed forever? And from what we saw, we keep saying this time and time again over the last couple of weeks that the days of what we saw in the past are definitely over. And if there is a beverage carve out, this is not going to happen in a timeline before the midterms. This is a number of years in the making. At least that's what I heard.
Yeah, listen, I believe that to be true. Whenever we go to conferences, the other thing that we really try to get out of it is we try to have conversations about something thematically that we want to learn about.
Yeah.
And Hemp was front and center for NewLake in this conference, trying to get a real sense what everybody thinks. And so here are my key takeaways from all those conversations we had over 2 days on hemp. Nobody really knows. I think that continues to be a theme in cannabis. Nobody really knows. Everybody's speculating. I'd say the one thing that people feel most convinced about is what you just said, Shad, which is we're not going back to what it was.
No.
We're not going back to another loophole. Having a short window to extinction for the hemp-derived products is a problem because there's just not a lot of time in the legislative calendar to try to get something done legislatively. And That's a real challenge. Most people seem to speculate that beverage will be carved out mostly for the alcohol industry. Nobody really had a very good idea on how that would happen or what the timeline is. And again, most people coalesced around the concept of it's hard to see how they could do that and get that regulatory structure in place in 11 months in a year where you have midterm elections with limited legislative time. And hey, by the way, we still have a number of funding bills that have to get done, and we may be down around another government shutdown in a few months. So I think when we look at it, it's a real problem, and hemp hasn't coalesced around a real strategy, which just makes their job even all the more difficult to get anything done for themselves.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Also, a topic I heard was just.
Can I go back? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to go back because I did want to make this point about the other question we asked everybody around what's the impact on the state legal cannabis industry? And I think that's what a lot of people who are focused on this sector want to understand. It became crystal clear to us through the conversations. It is a depends answer. Like everything else in this industry, it depends on the state you're focused on. So for those that are focused on Florida, where there's a significant hemp, and Anthony, even you and I were talking about this, given your Florida, since there's a significant hemp presence in Florida, it'll have a big impact depending on enforcement, of course, but it should have a big impact on the operators in Florida to a positive effect. For other states that maybe don't have a significant hemp presence as a competitive factor, maybe it's more like 3 to 5%. But I've heard people saying that it could be anywhere upwards of 20+% for the states where you had a significant hemp presence.
Do you think that's accurate though? Like to me, that seems a little aggressive.
I think it could be. I think it could be accurate. I mean, I know I'm sticking with my number, and I think 10% is probably going to get absorbed into the state-run industry. And if it's 20, 25, 30, and I'm wrong, that's fantastic. But I think a base case for the absorption of the hemp industry into state-run cannabis, and Anthony's correct, it's a much more nuanced conversation, especially on a state-by-state basis. But if we look just coast to coast, I think it's 10% of that market is absorbed by the state-run industry, and the rest is gravy.
Yeah, and one of the key things as far as the numbers being higher that I think some of you guys were combating with was the idea that the illicit market is still going to be here. When you give comparisons of prohibition that took place in alcohol, the illicit market thrived for as much as 10 years afterwards. So that definitely has to factor in. And plus, when you look at the media circles, when the hemp ban came out, when you look at the Kyle Turley's and there was this other stuff, Joe Rogan even talking about this, how it was bad for hemp. It wasn't about, yes, this had to happen because the following things were happening. Therefore, the average consumer still, I think in a lot of ways that doesn't follow the space and is as educated, I don't think they truly understand, this whole topic as to what's going on. So with that, I do think the illicit market will, still exist and exist for quite some time. But to your points, I think I was both agreeing with you guys that the 8 to 10% rule seems like the logical choice.
Yeah, and I think calculate, it's math, and the variables that go into the calculation again are different state by state. But I think you start with how big is the hemp market. Right? Nobody really knows how big the hemp market is on a state by state basis. There's speculation. So you first take a look at what is the hemp market in one state compared to the state legal market in the other state. And then you try to make an estimate of what percentage of that hemp market will transition into the state market. So let's just say you had a state that had $1 billion of hemp-derived product. How much of those sales are beverages? Those aren't likely going back into the dispensary marketplace. So now you're in the non-beverage segment. What percentage of those sales make it into the dispensary channel? And I think, it's a guess. Is it 5% to 15% of those previous sales making it back into the dispensary? Because why were people getting product from the hemp market? They were getting it for convenience, I believe, by going to a local smoke shop because it was readily available. I think people were buying it over the internet. And one of the other things we learned, I knew there was an interstate infrastructure around hemp, but one of the things that we learned, and I really think when you talk to Jim and some of the others involved in the hemp industry going forward, understanding what does the interstate infrastructure look like to support hemp, because once the ban starts to go into place, you're not going to have the mail order, because I don't think you can get the credit card companies processing those transactions anymore. I don't think you can get the post office delivering or UPS delivering those packages. And I think some of the players in that ecosystem will fall away because now they don't want the risk of interstate prosecution. For the same reason you don't see a ton of interstate activity among the state legal business.
You have to ask the question, why was this industry not saying at the time before this ban, like, we don't approve of this, we want to get rid of this? Because the response still in some ways is people are just surprised from that side of the business that this isn't right. And it begs the question as to, like, why was this not being proactive during these times? Because I think they didn't think it was, obviously they were making lots of money, and clearly they didn't think this day would come, but it came.
Think about it. Think about it logically. What are you going to do? Go on a crusade about what are you going to go? What are you going to do? Go on a crusade about 50% of Brett Worley's business, where the other 50% is he's supplying your business with your inputs and your products that you need. You're not going to cut off your nose to spite your face or bite the hand that feeds you. I mean, they thought that this was going to be just the freedom that they were able to act under for years, and that it was never going to run out. And the gravy train stopped. It got too big for its own well-being and just didn't. There were very bad aspects of it that needed to be put in place.
Another conversation I had last night was with Hirsch Jane talking about this new regulator in the state of California, along with a representative who's deep into speaking, lobbying for the New York market. And it was a good conversation to see the differences between the two states and how New York has made it a major priority because they see the opportunity upswing. And, obviously from the day one, it wasn't that way, but things have changed and you're seeing the turnaround story. But I was speaking with Hirsch, and he's just like, I still don't think it's going to be much a priority. I'm not buying too much into the state of California. But I did a video this week off of his op-ed and what that market could do for the overall space nationwide if they got turned around. But one thing that I was really happy to see in the insight was about the state of New York and how much it is a priority for them to continue on this forward momentum. And what a turnaround story it's been, don't you think, AC?
I think it's evolving into one. I mean, certainly that market has continuing issues, but worlds better than where it used to be. And it is good to see that progress. I think we should expect that progress will continue, but they certainly have some kinks they need to continue to work out.
That's for sure. Let's talk about some of the news that we missed, while we were out west. And the big one was Curaleaf and their $110 million acquisition of the cannabis company's Virginia assets. And they're obviously betting on adult use coming online in Virginia, which all signs point in that direction. So when you look at this, Anthony, does this deal, I guess, set a new valuation floor for East Coast assets, because it's a great step forward for Curaleaf, a head scratcher for the cannabis, because it appears that story, the more and more we hear it, it could be, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you can understand that these mergers and acquisitions and other companies purchasing assets at these distressed levels right now is probably going to be a trend that we will likely see more and more of heading into 26.
AD, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good deal for Curaleaf. It makes sense. That's a market that I think the MSOs need to and want to be in.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see if there are incremental licenses that are added on the backside of adult use. And the cannabis divested of the Virginia assets. I mean, they needed the cash. Obviously, Boris is paying a premium, especially compared to the Verano deal, for the 110 million versus I think 90 all in on the Verano deal. But Virginia is going to be, from what we can see, the consensus is Virginia is going to be a healthy market. I'm sure it'll have the same growth trajectory as all of the adult use flips that we see. You'll see boom in price. You'll see some price compression, normalization into kind of like a rollover state of where it's going to end up. But I'm for the deal. I know the market didn't perceive it very well, but when does a cannabis acquisition get perceived well in the market?
Yeah.
On day one, haven't really seen much of those.
Yeah. As far as valuations, like what grabbed your attention with this announcement besides the obvious, Anthony, Coniglio, knowing that, this is a big move, because when you look back at the cannabis after getting rid of their Florida assets, the first state that came to mind was the state of Virginia. So a big win for Curaleaf, a head scratcher for the cannabis, but some days, this is just the nature of the industry and what it's trending towards.
Yeah, I think, listen, there was excitement around the industry for the fact that a transaction of this size was getting executed in this environment, number one. Number two, the amount of cash that was included in that deal was also kind of eye-opening for a lot of people. And I think that's why the stock reacted the way it did, which is Curaleaf is utilizing a lot of cash in a world where they're still building up their cash flow from operations. They're making a lot of investments. They continue to be in an investment cycle. International, as we all know, is the big investment for them. And so they continue in this investment cycle where most others in the industry have stepped back from a cash preservation perspective. And so I think it was surprising to a lot of people how much cash they were willing to put out there in this transaction.
Yeah. How big is this market supposed to be again once adult use, if and when it goes live in 26? Did you guys review the numbers or no?
I've not gone back to review the numbers. We looked at it a while ago when Rec was on the deck. It's nice to see that nothing's 100%, particularly in this industry. But given the new governor and the expectation that it gets launched next year, I think this is exciting for Curaleaf.
How do you approach that market once it gets flipped for you and NewLake?
Yeah, listen, we like these limited license markets. We think that's where the best value is preserved for our business, where we're investing in buildings. Limited competition helps margins, just as a better market to invest into. And so as those operators look to expand capacity, if they need to expand capacity, if they want to expand capacity, we've got capital available to them. So we try to dialogue with everybody, and people know who we are at this point. We've been around the business for 7 years, and we've got $90 million of available credit capacity to put to work.
Well, now time for everybody's topic, which is good old rescheduling. There were topics of that, and it was floating around, but it's a lot of news that we didn't already know. I was speaking to something very significant, and they were saying this is a one-person decision, and that is the president. And you do not want the administration handling this whatsoever, because behind the scenes, there's really not a lot of people within his cabinet to make this happen. So if this decision does happen, again, it's going to happen from President Trump. It's going to come down to one person, and trying to predict somebody with that kind of personality is nothing you can basically achieve. So again, we always say it could happen tomorrow. It could happen in 6 months. No one knows. And the closest people, even close to him, don't even know. So I thought that was telling. But again, we keep hearing from people that they do think it's going to happen. I'm not sure if you heard anything like that, Anthony, but clearly this is stuff that we already knew, right?
Yeah, I heard nothing new. In fact, I heard very, very little discussion about rescheduling at this conference. People were more focused on some of the distressed names that are out there in the marketplace looking to monetize assets. They were focused on this Curaleaf deal, and they're focused on their own business, and they were focused on hemp and trying to figure out how to capitalize on a pullback in hemp sales. Very, very little discussion around rescheduling. But I agree with what you just summarized. I think it's one person's decision, and the timing of which is at his discretion. So who knows? I mean, he just allowed mini cars today, right? He just approved that we can manufacture mini cars. And apparently the way that came up, I was looking at some interviews because I keep on East Coast time. So I was up pretty early watching CNBC the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Some of those interviews, apparently he came back from his trip overseas, and he asked the transportation secretary, why don't we do more of these mini cars here? And he explained some of the issues around TSB, the Highway Transportation Safety Board, and some of the safety issues. And he said, let's get this thing done. Like, let's build them here. Well, now we're going to have mini cars. So there you go. There's an example where he decides it, and now the administration's going to go do it.
That's telling. Like, talk about something just spur of the moment, and then all of a sudden it passes. But that's what you're dealing with. And I think that's the sentiment that everybody's got, is just like common sense, let it prevail. But it's what do you do, and how do you interpret that? But when you look, it didn't take you a conference to figure out what we need to look for going into 2026. But like you said, getting face to face with people, you kind of have an idea as to what 26 will look like, and you're sharing some of those conversations and those ideas and those thoughts with other people face to face in the space. What do people need to be pay attention to and be prepared for come next year for the industry? Because right now, like I said, there's a lot of negative sentiment on where things sit right now, but things could change. But what would be your takeaway?
Before reform, and we won't talk about when it happens, although I think Anthony pegged you down to January 1st. Was that earlier this week you got pegged down to?
January 1st, 2026, or 2025. No, January 1st, 2026. That's the Shad Dale's guarantee.
And once that passes and it doesn't happen, we're on to another Shad Dale's guarantee.
We'll be on for February 1st. I think before that actual rescheduling catalyst, whenever it happens, by and large, I think it's more of the same. It'll be the companies that have been able to make it through so far. Most of them are going to continue to make it through. They figured out the so-called new normal. They figured out how to survive. What I didn't hear is, be on the lookout for X, Y, and Z. They're the next ones to topple over. I didn't hear any new names that already weren't being talked about in terms of distress. And so I'm sure there'll be more. There always are every single year. Every industry, you have companies that become distressed. But it feels like the pig and the python, so to speak, to use that analogy. We know the big names that are going to be in distress, and those will continue to get worked through into 2026. And then once you get rescheduling, it's not just rescheduling that's the panacea that fixes this industry. It's the first domino that's necessary to really catalyze subsequent dominoes, like additional state activations in terms of medical marijuana programs or conversion from medical to adult use, and then getting federal legislation such as SAFER, or dare I even say states. But it's an important catalyst. This industry needs that kind of shot to the arm.
Yep. It's everything a lot of people know right now, but that was the sentiment for sure. Did you guys see the news in Texas this week about the expansion? It's still obviously up for approval, but it looks like, some notable names got some licenses in Texas, and there's also some notable names that did not. Anthony, I know that you were following this story closely. Feel free to chime in too, AC, on Texas, because I know you've been looking at that market somewhat. But Anthony, were you surprised to see some of the companies that did get a license in this?
No. I mean, Trulieve and Verano have power. They've won a lot of licenses themselves, and I know that Brian Dombrowski was very vocal about they're going to now go to war to try and discredit these companies from the merit-based system via their applications to get the licenses pulled, because it was conditional And the Texans are now going to start to fight against us, which I think is crap, to be completely honest. The most interesting thing that I heard about the Texas market is going to be, if you looked at the licenses when they were granted, there were sectors that like each license said unique ones. It was like health sector 2 or health sector 1. Apparently, if let's say Trulieve is to put a dispensary in each of the 10 sectors, they can then expand on to whatever number of dispensaries they want, as long as they get approval in the state of Texas. So there could be a scaled medical system relatively quickly.
Yeah.
In Texas, if this all goes to plan.
Anthony Coniglio, did you see the news this week about that?
I did see some of the names that had received those licenses. Listen, I'm excited that TCUP is expanding. I'm excited that they're handing out new licenses. But I think, like we've seen in many other states, we're going to see litigation. We're going to see, as Anthony said, real pushback against the industry. So we've got a road ahead of us, and the table isn't necessarily set yet, in my opinion.
Yeah. So when you look at both Trulieve and Verano, like this signals in some ways like approve it in hard jurisdictions to strengthen its, I guess, federal credibility. Or do you think this is somewhat like of a beachhead for eventual adult use with minimal near-term earnings? Like, how do you guys view this approach? Yes, it's great that these companies got this news this week, but it's all about the next steps. Like, how should people basically interpret the state of Texas? Because this is a slow rollout right now. AV, go ahead.
I think Texas stays medical for a while.
Yeah.
Texas is not going adult use anytime soon. I mean, you had Dan Patrick, which I don't know how long his staying power is in politics in Texas after the hemp ban, but Dan Patrick supported the teacup expansion. Dan Patrick's not going to support an adult use cannabis initiative in the state of Texas. I just don't see it. I would love for it to happen. I think Texas would be a very powerful market. And if someone like him scales in Texas and gets adult use, then gets adult use in Florida, let's see in the next 3 to 5 years, that's a huge win for her business. But will that happen? I just can't see it in Texas anytime soon.
Yeah, 30 million people.
The current program, very, very small penetration. It's good that you've got the program expanding, so you're going to get more patients, but now you're going to have more competition. So I think these licenses are great for those that get them. Unequivocally, they're great. They're now assets that can be sold. But let's remember, they need to build the entire infrastructure. So think about the CapEx that's going to be required to build out all the dispensaries that Anthony was talking about, or to build out cultivation capacity. And in a world, back to our comments 20 minutes ago, in a world where people aren't really, by and large, in a CapEx cycle, they want to preserve cash flow. That would be a real near-term pressure for some of the companies to take an aggressive build out. So I think it's a growth.
Since there are so many well-heeled and good actors in the hemp industry, you would think that there are assets and infrastructure that are not going to be able to be leveraged on a go-forward basis that you could go in and purchase for a good price, because apparently that exists. Apparently there are vast swaths of THCA flower cultivation facilities in Texas. I'm sure there's tons of other processing stuff as well. If that stuff does exist in Texas and all these good actors are there, I'm sure they'd be eager to sell their infrastructure that they're not going to be able to use moving forward.
Trulieve is trying to get into Perry's backyard. This will get bloody, writes Brian Dombrowski. Also, Mitch writes, Texas is going to become Florida. Florida will become rec first. You guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Florida will become rec first, yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, but like what Anthony said, I mean, let's not put the cart before the horse. Texas is a very, very small medical market. Florida is the largest medical market in the country, and arguably the world, aside from Germany. Texas is not going to become Florida anytime soon.
Yep. Yeah, that's for sure.
And sure as hell's not going to be cheaply done anytime soon.
We heard numbers as well in some of these conversations that people think Ohio, as much as 50% rebound for the regulated market. based off of this hemp ban, 50% in the state of Ohio alone. I thought that was an eye opener, but I think that might be, again, what do I know? I'm just going off of some of the feedback that I saw, but some interesting conversations that you guys had definitely at that event, going back and forth with various people from the industry. But maybe there is a point. Maybe it is that much. But when you hear the 50% number, it seems like a big number in one market. Maybe there's something I'm not understanding what's going on in Ohio, but I know there's a few people that are on our podcast that do, and I'm sure they would provide some good insight towards it.
I'll go. There was I won't say the bet. There was a bet that was made. And listen, this is what makes a market. People have differences of opinions.
Yeah.
We don't know who's going to be right.
Yeah.
I absolutely take the under on that. But listen, you just don't know. You just don't know. And the difficulty in that is being able to parse out how much of that growth is going to be from the continued expansion of the adult use market in Ohio, and how much of it is actually going to be the conversion of sales from the hemp market into the state legal market. So it makes that a little difficult. But for me, I would take the under. I don't think anywhere purely on hemp conversion. I don't think anywhere near that.
And in a state like Ohio, I think it's got a unique characteristic that it's in relatively close proximity to Michigan. Hemp people that are probably going to have or lose access to product, I think they would go and actually no, Ohio's adult use, but it's still going to be a higher price product than what you get in Michigan. I could see some of those sales just jumping the border and going to Michigan. But I agree with Anthony. 50% is a pretty high watermark.
I will say though, on the Michigan piece with this big excise tax that's going into play,
it's true.
Right. And so if that wholesale tax gets implemented, and if the retailers say that they're going to try to pass much of that on to the consumer, that could change that dynamic a little bit. But even considering if it does change that dynamic in the price point, I still don't think you get that type of bump.
I also learned last night, not that everybody talks about this state, but the black market is very strong in the state of Rhode Island. And it's because many elected officials, it's like family generations. And there's a lot of stuff. I've never paid attention to it. I've never really spoken about it. But we hear these stories that when you start speaking with people that are speaking directly with government officials, like even a couple months ago, we were talking about Oklahoma and how lawmakers were granting licenses to the Chinese cartel for $75,000, yet they should have been selling for $2,500. It's mind-boggling when you really look at some of the stuff that, yes, we've come a long way across the nation, but there's still a long ways to go as far as combating with this illicit market. We've had Steve Robinson on from Maine, but even small little states like Rhode Island even have a thriving black market program, and it's not something that's been going on for a couple of years. This has been going on for quite some time.
Yes, nothing much to add. Yes, and
I don't know. I don't know nearly enough about the demographics of Rhode Island to even comment on that.
Well, that was just a conversation I took part in last night. But yeah, they were saying people continue to get reelected, and it's all through one family to another. And it's been going on for decades. And just when you think that Rhode Island would be this, type of state that, let's face it, some of the most expensive real estate in the world is in Rhode Island. But not to sit here and say that cannabis doesn't attract people with a lot of money, because it does. But again, if you're going to combat something like this, and this is something we need to do as far as the regulated market from Washington, when you start to peel the onion, this has been going on for decades. And we shall see what happens next. But all in all, it was good to see you in Vegas this week. And a rumor has it the MJBizCon, the days in Vegas might be numbered. I heard it might be moving to Long Beach, California next year. Don't know if that'll happen.
Heard that.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that, but I don't know that you need the vastness of Las Vegas for the size that this conference has become.
Yeah.
And the one complaint that just about everybody has had about Las Vegas for the 7 years we've been doing it is the distance between meetings and hotels. It takes a lot of time if you're going from the Cosmo down to Encore, down to the Fontainebleau, and then back over to the Aria. It's just a lot of time moving around Vegas. It's so big.
Yeah, and a lot of those companies that, let's face it, with 280E that are driving around in Ubers and taxi cabs, because there's a lot of money that adds up when you're cruising around in that city during those times. Those are expenses they can't write off. But yeah, I don't know. What do we hit, Anthony? Probably 20 or to 25 taxi and Uber rides from one end to the other throughout the 3 days that we were there. I don't know if you ever done that Tesla tunnel. Was that the proper name of it, Anthony? I forget what it is, but it's pretty cool when you go from the convention center kind of through. But what was the amount of numbers that they said, Anthony, that they're going to have? Was it 92 miles across, or not?
Yeah, eventually they're going to bore all through the strip. It's going to go from the Allegiant Stadium to the baseball stadium to basically every hotel, and you'll be able to go in those Teslas just under the entire city.
So it's not a Hyperloop; it's Tesla vehicle.
No, it's not. It's not Hyperloop. This is the Boring Company. The Boring Company, technically, I think the Boring Company and Hyperloop are subsidiaries of one another, or parent companies to one another, because the Boring Company bores out the tunnels that they then put the Hyperloop into.
Yes.
But this is kind of like the analog version of the Hyperloop, because they're doing the boring tunnels, but it's all just Teslas doing loops all day throughout that track.
Yeah, and a $1.75 billion baseball stadium, but you can really see how the development closer to the airport is going to be revamped. But I think Las Vegas, from last I heard, is the fastest growing city in North America, or should say that, North America. But it's definitely growing lots, and you see a huge amount of people from California moving into the state of Nevada. Many movie production companies now opening up shop in Nevada that we've said even last year, but times have changed. But let's hope this regulator in California can start to support some trust. But according to Hirsch's op-ed, I think the train has left the station, and the trust factor has been eroded so much to the point where they don't think it's going to be a priority for. And why should they, considering what's happened? But the crackdown of the black market in New York is real. It's aggressive, and it's good to see, but it's the complete opposite in California, which is disappointing to see, which is why many people in the industry at one time got involved in this the state, and now have since left for obvious reasons. And that's all I'm going to talk about. I think that's it, my friend. Good seeing you this week, and let's keep in touch, and let's get you on before the holiday season, or right before Christmas. But Merry Christmas to you and the family, and thank you for asking me the question of the day about my daughter, who's doing great and learning lots. And it's always good to catch up with you.
Always great seeing you guys. It was wonderful. Have a great December. We'll catch up soon.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye. Iron Mike said $40,000 a month on weed. Really?
That's what he said. That's a lot of weed.
That's a lot of weed.
I mean, even if he's buying stuff that's $4,000 a pound, which he's not, that would mean he was smoking 10 pounds a month. That's 2.5 pounds a week. That's a lot of weed. Yeah. We might sound right now that we smoked about 10 pounds this month with the voices that we're having, but you're hilarious on some of those events that we were at. One event out in the parking lot, talking to some guy and saying that is sewage water that's coming up, and you might want to fix that. Yeah, that was an interesting facet of the event. Yeah.
All in all, it was good to see you this week. Tyler Rose, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. And I saw Guap in the background. I don't know if he was going to come on or not, but that's okay. But I think we'll wrap it up here. We're about 40 minutes into today's podcast, but we'll be back on Monday, fully revamped, with Michael Bronstein, get his takeaway as well, because like I said, he hosted a big time event this week. What a week and a half. We're going to have the CFO of Organigram on, Paul DeLuca, to talk about their latest earnings. So Organigram is going to be going on, and anybody want any guests that we can think of as we head into the holiday season? Let us know. Maybe it's time to get Mark Cahodes back on.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. I'll let you go to bed. I know
you're just spitballing right now.
I know. I'm just trying to close this. And the flight was good home, I assume?
It was great. It's quicker. It's an hour less on the way back than it is there.
Yes. Montel Williams.
5-hour flight is on the way there.
Yeah, it's not the greatest flying there. Montel Williams, yes. We've reached out to them. Kyle Sherman, great speaker, and he's from Flow Hub. We had a good conversation, met up with him, and hope to get him on relatively soon. But he's working on.
Flow Hub did it nice. They essentially had a booth in one of the suites in the Encore.
Yeah,
that's a good way to do it. Just have a captive audience, and have strong branding, and just have everybody come meet you.
Yes.
Versus shooting around at all the hotels.
Very good point. Well, people have obviously the money in their budget. It's a great choice. Chicago Atlantic put on an incredible event. One night. It was like they wanted to circle back and show what cannabis used to be in the early days. But Kyle Sherman from Flow Hub is working with Ricky Lake. For anybody that used to follow talk shows back in the 90s, but she's producing this nationwide tour where they're just driving around across the U.S. But they're going to be providing some of that. It's actually available on their YouTube channel, but it's really, really good storylines and quality production as to what they're building out there. But anyway, that's it for now. We'll see you guys all back here 4:00 on Monday. I'll have a quick recap of this week's biggest events, which obviously includes the news of Texas and some takeaways for Curaleaf and what next steps should be pertaining to that. And if you want to learn more information about the weekly recaps and get it on a daily basis, make sure to scan that QR code and get all this information on a daily basis by becoming a baked-in newsletter subscriber. All right, sir. AV, good to see you in Vegas. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you back here Monday. Thanks, everybody. See you back here Monday. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching here today. Listen, if you're getting value from us here at TDR, make sure to check us out at TDR Plus. It's our exclusive membership community. Why? Well, you'll see CEO interviews that go beyond business, showing a personal side that you won't find anywhere else, including the biggest names of the industry. Plus, you'll get insights from analysts and day traders on where the industry's headed, both short-term and long-term, and a direct chat group with our team. It's only $7 a month, just 25 cents a day, and it helps support everything we do here at TDR. If you want to join, just click the join button below and become a TDR Plus member today. And once again, a big thank you for being part of our community. So that's it for today. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.